Caleb adjusted his pack, wiping the sweat from his forehead. The air had grown suddenly cold, dropping 20 degrees in a matter of seconds. "All right, Julie," he said, turning around to offer her a hand up the rocky incline. "We're almost at the clearing," but his hand grasped only damp, heavy mist. The trail behind him, which had been bright with autumn sun just moments ago, was now swallowed by a wall of gray fog. He laughed nervously, expecting her to jump out from behind a hemlock tree. "Julianne?" he called out. The only answer was the sound of dead leaves skittering across the stone. That silence would become the loudest sound in Caleb's life for the next 10 years. The Great Smoky Mountains have a way of holding on to secrets. The locals will tell you that the blue haze that settles over the ridges isn't just moisture or pollution, but the breath of the ancient forest itself. It is a living thing, watching, waiting, and occasionally taking. For Caleb and Julianne, the mountains were supposed to be a sanctuary, weren't reckless teenagers or inexperienced tourists. They were in their early 30s, seasoned hikers who had spent 5 years exploring every corner of Tennessee and North Carolina together. It was October, the time of year when the Appalachians put on their most spectacular dress. The maples and oaks were burning with vibrant hues of crimson, burnt orange and gold. The air was crisp, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. It was their 5th anniversary. Caleb had planned this trip for months. He'd chosen a trail that was less traveled, a winding path near the Tennessee border, known locally as Whispering Ridge. It wasn't on the main tourist maps, which appealed to them. They wanted isolation. They wanted the world to narrow down to just the two of them. As they drove their Subaru up the winding access road, the mood was light. Julianne had her window down, her hand riding the wind, her dark hair whipping around her face. She was the spirited one, the artist who saw shapes in the clouds and stories in the moss. Caleb was the anchor, the accountant who packed the first aid kit, checked the weather reports, and double-knotted his boots. They were a perfect balance, a team. They parked the car at the trailhead. There were no other vehicles. Just the dense wall of trees and the soft sound of a distant creek. Caleb remembers checking his watch. It was 9 a.m. The sky was a piercing blue without a single cloud. "Perfect day," Julianne had said, shouldering her pack. She leaned in and kissed him, a quick happy peck on the cheek. "Let's go find some magic, Kel." Those words would haunt him. The memory of her smile, the light in her eyes, the way her red jacket stood out against the greens and browns of the forest. They started the ascent. The trail was steep, but manageable. Winding through groves of ancient hemlocks that blocked out the sun, creating a cathedral-like atmosphere, they talked about their future. They talked about buying a house with a big porch, maybe starting a family in a year or two. They were writing the next chapter of their lives with every step they took, unaware that the book was about to be slammed shut. By noon, they had reached a high elevation. The terrain had changed. The tall trees gave way to dense rhododendron hell's thickets, so thick you couldn't see 3 feet into them. The ground was rocky and uneven. Temperature began to fluctuate, a common occurrence in the Smokies, where the altitude creates its own microclimates. Julianne was walking about 20 feet ahead of Caleb. She was chasing the light, stopping frequently to take photos of fungi growing on rotting logs or the way the sun filtered through the canopy. Caleb hung back, content to watch her. He loved her enthusiasm. He loved the way she stopped to appreciate the small things that he often walked right past. "Look at this, Kel," she shouted back, pointing toward a rocky outcrop that jutted out over a valley. "I bet the view is incredible from there." "Shh, be careful," Caleb called back, his voice instinctive. "The rocks look slippery." "I'm always careful," she teased. She stepped off the main trail, pushing through a small gap in the rhododendrons to get to the overlook. It was only 10 yards away. Caleb paused to tie his shoe. He bent down, his fingers working the laces. It took him perhaps 15 seconds. In those 15 seconds, the mountain exhaled. A bank of fog, thick and white as milk, rolled over the ridge. It didn't drift in slowly. It rushed in like a tidal wave. The temperature plummeted. The bright autumn sun vanished, replaced by a gray, suffocating twilight. Caleb stood up, blinking. He couldn't see the outcrop anymore. Couldn't even see the tree he had just passed. "Jules," he said. His voice sounded flat, dampened by the heavy moisture in the air. He waited for her to reply. He expected to hear her say, "Wow, you can't see anything out here," or "Help me find the path." "Julianne." He yelled louder, taking a step toward where she had gone. "Stay where you are, I'm coming to you." He pushed through the rhododendrons. The branches scratched at his face and arms. He reached the rocky outcrop. It was empty. The drop-off was sheer, plunging down into a sea of white mist. His heart began to hammer against his ribs. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. "Julianne, this isn't funny." He spun around in a circle. The fog was disorienting. It wiped away landmarks, direction, and depth perception. Had she gone left, right? Had she fallen? He got down on his hands and knees near the edge, looking for skid marks, broken branches, anything that suggested a fall. The moss was undisturbed. She hadn't fallen. She had just stepped away. The first hour was a blur of adrenaline and denial. Caleb moved in widening circles, screaming her name until his throat was raw. Lou. He blew the emergency whistle attached to his backpack strap. The shrill sound pierced the woods, 3 sharp blasts. Beep, beep. He stopped and listened. He held his breath, straining his ears for a response. A shout, a whistle back, a cry for help. The wind rustled the dry leaves. A crow called out, a harsh, mocking sound. But from Julianne, there was nothing. As afternoon wore on, the light began to fade. In the mountains, night doesn't fall. It rises from the ground up. Shadows lengthened, and the trees took on twisted, menacing shapes. The temperature continued to drop. Caleb knew Julianne was wearing only a light fleece. She didn't have the emergency blanket. He did. She didn't have the flashlight. He did. Guilt began to claw at him. Why did I let her walk ahead? Why did I stop to tie my shoe? Why didn't I grab her hand? He realized he couldn't search in the dark. If he got lost, he couldn't help her. He had to get down. He had to get help. The descent was a nightmare. He ran, stumbling over roots, twisting his ankle, ignoring the pain. He reached the car just as true darkness settled in. He drove like a madman to the nearest ranger station, his hazard lights flashing, tears blurring his vision. By midnight, the search was underway. But the Smokies are vast, and the fog had grounded any aerial support. The rangers were professional, grim-faced men and women who knew the terrain. They asked Caleb questions that felt like accusations. Was she depressed? Did you have an argument? Is there any reason she would want to disappear? No. Caleb slammed his hand on the desk. We were happy. We are happy. She just walked into the fog. Caleb didn't sleep that night. Sat in the plastic chair of the ranger station, staring at the topographic map on the wall. He imagined her out there, cold, alone, scared. Was she calling his name? Was she huddled under a log? Every minute that ticked by on the clock felt like a betrayal. The search lasted for 10 days. It was one of the most extensive searches in the park's history. Volunteers, dog teams, helicopters, and drones combed the Whispering Ridge area. They found a candy wrapper. They found a discarded water bottle, not hers. They found bear scat. But they found no trace of Julianne, no footprints, no scraps of clothing caught on thorns. It was as if she had been lifted into the sky. On the 11th day, the lead ranger sat Caleb down. He took off his hat and looked at the ground. "Caleb," he said softly, "we're scaling back. We're moving from a rescue operation to a recovery operation." "You mean you're giving up?" Caleb whispered. "We aren't giving up. With the survivability window, with the temperatures we've had." Caleb went home, but he didn't return to his life. How could he? His house was full of her. Her unfinished painting was on the easel. Her Her coffee mug was still on the nightstand, a ring of dried coffee at the bottom. Couldn't bring himself to wash it. The months dragged into years. This is the part of the story that doesn't make the news. The cameras leave. Volunteers go back to their jobs, but the survivor remains in the wreckage. Caleb became a ghost in his own life. He went to work, but he wasn't really there. He stopped seeing friends. He spent his weekends driving back to the Smokies, hiking the same trails, looking under the same bushes. He bought high-tech gear, studied maps, until he had memorized every contour line. He kept her cell phone line active. Every night, before he went to sleep, he would call her number, just to hear her voice on the voicemail. "Hi, this is Julianne. I'm probably out making art or hiking. Leave a message." "I'm still here, Jules," he would whisper into the phone. "I'm still waiting." He tortured himself with scenarios. Maybe she had hit her head and had amnesia. Maybe she had been abducted, though there was no evidence of anyone else on the trail. Maybe she had run away, though his heart told him that was impossible. The not knowing was a special kind of hell. It was a wound that refused to scab over. It bled fresh every morning he woke up alone. He aged prematurely. Gray streaked his hair. Deep lines etched themselves around his mouth. He became the sad man of the neighborhood, the one people pitied but avoided because his grief was too uncomfortable to be around. 7 years later, a group of off-trail hikers, bushwhacking through a remote, incredibly dense ravine miles away from where Julianne had vanished, found something. It wasn't a body. The forest recycles biological matter too quickly for that. It was a small, weatherproof digital camera, half buried in the mulch and moss. The memory card was corroded, but a forensic specialist managed to retrieve the data. The rangers called Caleb. They told him to come in. They didn't tell him what they found over the phone. Caleb drove to the station, his heart feeling like a stone in his chest. He didn't know if he wanted answers. Hope had become a dangerous thing. The ranger set a laptop on the desk. "We found her camera, Caleb. It was miles from the trail." "Yes." "She must have gotten turned around in the fog and walked in the completely wrong direction. She walked deeper into the wild instead of toward the road." Caleb nodded, his mouth dry. "The photos? They're the ones from the hike," the ranger said. "And then, or some she took later." He clicked the mouse. There was Julianne, smiling at the trailhead. Julianne pointing at a hawk. The last photo he remembered her taking of the fungi. Then, photos taken in the fog. Blurry shapes of trees, then a video file. Caleb stopped breathing. The video was dark, illuminated only by the camera's small screen light. The sound of wind was heavy. Julianne's face appeared, close to the lens. She looked tired, pale, and her hair was wet. But she wasn't crying. She looked calm. "Hey, Cal." Her voice whispered from the past. "The battery's about to die. It's been, I think, 2 nights. I don't know. Twisted my knee pretty bad. I can't walk anymore." "Ah!" She looked up at the canopy, then back at the lens. "I'm not scared. It's strange, but I'm not scared. The woods are beautiful even now. I just want you to know that I'm sorry I walked off. I'm sorry I didn't listen. But I don't want you to be sad. I don't want you to stop hiking. Promise me you won't stop looking for the magic." She smiled, a weak, trembling smile that broke Caleb's heart into a million pieces. "I love you, Caleb. I love you so much. I'll see you in the colors of the leaves. Okay, bye." The screen went black. Caleb sat in the office and wept. He wept not out of despair, but out of release. She hadn't been taken by a monster. She hadn't been murdered. She hadn't abandoned him. She had gotten lost. She had fought. And she had passed with love in her heart. The mystery of the why was gone. The silence was filled with her voice. 2 weeks later, Caleb returned to Whispering Ridge. It was October again. The leaves were the same brilliant crimson and gold as they were on that day 7 years ago. The air was crisp. He hiked to the spot where she had vanished. He didn't stop there, pushed through the rhododendrons. Following the path the rangers said she must have taken. He walked for hours, down into the deep ravine to the place where the camera was found. He knelt on the soft earth. He dug a small hole and placed a metal box inside. In it was her paintbrush, a letter he had written, and her wedding ring. He covered it with soil and placed a heavy river stone on top. He stood up and looked around. The fog was absent today. The sun filtered through the trees in shafts of holy light, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. "I promise," Caleb said aloud to the trees. "I won't stop looking for the magic." He turned and began the long hike back. He was still alone. I'd always miss her. But the heaviness in his chest was lighter now. He knew that she wasn't missing anymore. She was exactly where she loved to be, part of the wind, part of the rain, part of the eternal, smoky mist of the mountains. The woods were silent, but for the first time in 7 years, it wasn't an empty silence. It was a peaceful one.